Hello and welcome. My name is Jack B. Thank you for taking the time to view my video. This episode is just an introductory to my series, and a lot of introductory videos might be quite boring. I hope this one's not. I hope it gives you an idea of what to expect. Each one will be better than the previous one is my hope. As a note for this series, when I'm speaking, I'm referring to the government or leadership of a country, not the citizens of that country. That's important to understand. Sometime in the future, I'd like to have live shows or hear feedback and ideas from the viewers. The reason I started this series is that for the last several years, I've noticed that there is an abundant amount of misleading and misinformation today. Information concerning national and international events is worse than ever. And I'm really struggling to believe that the information from one person or a group represents the complete story or is even accurate or true. Who are the people conveying this information? Well, there's advocates who get paid to tell stories, news people, government officials, salespeople, marketeers, and not to mention other countries. And why? It's simple, because they want to influence us for their own personal financial or economic gain. In any case, they're getting something out of their position, whatever their reason. So, as an example of the episodes to come and the type of series this will cover, let's take a quick look at elected officials and who they may represent. Elected officials are quick to tell you they represent the American people and they perform the duties the American people want. So my question is, who are these Americans to which they are referring? People who voted for them? People who contributed money for their election? And maybe it's both. I'd like to believe they represent all American citizens, but based upon what I've seen recently, I can't believe they actually do. To get an idea of the elected officials and their constituents, we can take a look at elections and the number of people who vote in those elections. So let's take a look at Congress. There are 435 members of Congress who serve 2-year terms. They represent and are elected by districts. And as I understand it, there are approximately 700,000 people per district. Their individual elections don't necessarily give a cross-section of the nation because of the number of that vote in that election, although it does allow for small groups to have federal representation. It also promotes the idea of discussion, negotiations, and compromise for them to obtain mutual benefits for all, which, by the way, is our form of government, a constitutional republic and democracy. So let's take a look at the Senate. There are 100 senators. 2 are elected from each state. They serve 6-year terms, and there are elections every 2 years for approximately 1/3 of the Senate. While there are more voters per Senate, they only represent the state. The presidential election really represents a cross-section of the country, which is performed every 4 years, as you know. So let's take a look at the numbers for the 2020 election. In 2020, the population of the U.S. was approximately 329.5 million people. Of that number, 252.3 million people were of voting age. And of that number, 168.4 million people were actually registered to vote. That means that 83.9 million people of voting age were not registered to vote. And of those who were registered, only 155.5 million did vote. That means 12.8 million people were registered who did not vote. So there are 96.8 million Americans who could have voted but did not. That's a large number of Americans, certainly more than voted for either Democrat or Republican. 81.3 million people voted Democrat. 74.2 million people voted Republican. As we can see, approximately 32% voted for one party and 29% voted for the other party. And this is not exactly the majority of the American people. It's urgent to get the 83.9 million Americans who are not registered. And they should register as non-affiliated or independent. And the reason for this is if the candidates can't count them in their box because they're registered either Democrat or Republican, then they'll have to disclose their platforms to each and every one of them to get their vote. They need to earn their vote. They need to be clear on their agenda and how it benefits the American people. And remember, let's get all the 96.8 million Americans to vote. And by the way, I realize that all voting-aged Americans can't vote for one reason or another. But I think that number would give us a nice third party. And that would really make this country go a long way. You hear both Democrats and Republicans naysaying a third independent party. And I believe they're doing that because they've been groomed to do that. They were brought up to do that, and that's how they believe things ought to be. Not to mention that it threatens their positions in the government. That if there's a third party, it's an unknown they'd have to contend with. But in the end, it should be up to the American people. Anyway, so the intent of this series is to provide topics and subject matter for viewers' consideration, to demonstrate the need to look at other sources to validate the information, to demonstrate the topic may not be correct in content. Hopefully the viewer will think about all the true facts in context and make a cognitive decision. Generally, to maintain objectivity, I'll not reveal to the viewers what I think. Of course, maybe my body language might give me away. So just a few of the future topics for discussion are electric vehicles really eco-friendly? That's a good one. Is AI a threat? Why are CEOs of major American corporations going to China? Is America still a major influence around the world? Are the CCP, the RCP, Iran and North Korea friends of the U.S.? What is the global influence of the CCP, RCP, Iran, and North Korea? And also the misuse of snapshots of information rather than the full context of the subject matter. So that's just a list of some of the topics that I'll be covering in the future. So I believe the series will be thought-provoking and entertaining. Be sure to watch upcoming episodes for the previously mentioned topics. If you have any ideas or topics you wish to discuss, please send them to info, at lead, follow, or stepaside.com. Until next time, be safe. Take care.